We've talked about what is family. We've talked about what is marriage. We've talked about what is love. We've talked about children and raising children. Let's talk a little bit about the future. Let's talk about what it means to leave a legacy, something going forward, something to be remembered by. Any of y'all take early American history? If you were in school, high school, college, any of y'all have to take that? I did. Do y'all remember the name Jonathan Edwards? Jonathan Edwards was a preacher in the early 1700s, well before the Revolution. And you may remember the name of his most famous sermon, Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. I'll tell you, don't try to read it in the language he wrote it because it's really boring. But if you read through it and you read the message, it's a powerful sermon. And he was a very, I'll just say, a prolific writer, and was one of the instrumental causes for the first Great Awakening, the first major revival that took place here in the Americas. Jonathan Edwards and his wife had a pretty large, his wife Sarah, they had a large family. And but as he was pastor more than a revival preacher, and he would talk to his wife Sarah, and as he was writing sermons and talking about the church, he would listen to Sarah, and they would have these conversations back and forth. And as the children got older, they brought the children into these conversations and would ask the children and get their opinions, and they would share all of this. And so someone wanted to figure out what Jonathan Edwards' legacy was. And so they went backwards. So you figure he died in around 1750. 150 years later, what, 4 generations? 5 generations maybe, at best? This is the legacy of Jonathan Edwards. 100 lawyers, a dean of a law school, 80 holders of public office, 66 physicians and the dean of a medical school, 65 professors of colleges and universities, 30 judges, 13 college presidents, 3 mayors of large cities, 3 governors of states, 3 United States senators, 1 controller of the United States Treasury, and 1 vice president of the United States. Do you think that Jonathan and Sarah Edwards left a legacy? Intentionally living with family, and not just going through the motions of family. I imagine many of you have been where Carla and I have. You look at your calendar or your schedule for the day in the morning, and you realize there's too much. I can't get it all done. But you try, and rather than moving things, you blow through the day, and all of a sudden, it's the end of the day. You're exhausted. You're tired, you're hungry, you've eaten too much fast food, or you've had 17 cups of coffee and you're wired like the preacher. And we've forgotten to have a relationship with the people around us. What kind of that in itself leaves a legacy? Or you say, I'm going to spend some time talking, reading with a child. I'm going to spend some time just throwing a ball with my son or with my daughter. I'm going to spend some time going and visiting with somebody. What does it mean to you to leave a legacy? What part of your life do you want to leave for the generations that follow you? I've shared with you before, I wear my grandfather's ring. It was only time I want to wear a tie, really. And but every time I put it on, I remember Big Daddy. And I love the names that grandparents are given, don't you? Mimi, Nana, Papa, Big Daddy, Big Mama. We can go on and on and on. And I know the grandparents are here, but you didn't call my name. But we'll get to that later. What kind of legacy are you going to leave behind you? First, let me say this. If you want to leave a legacy, you have to be intentional about leaving a legacy. None of you would intentionally leave a family member, a spouse, or children. None of you thinking that you were going to come to the end of your life would intentionally leave them with nothing. We make plans for the short-term future with insurance. We make plans by putting money into 401ks and 403bs and Roths and other instruments. We make financial plans, but what kind of legacy do we intentionally leave for the generations to come? Here's a couple things I want to bring to you. A lot of times when we read the Psalm, we just kind of blow through it. We just kind of, okay, here's 22 seconds while Terry's reading the sermon, reading these scriptures. I'm going to go ahead and then we come back to it. But if you listen to the Psalm 112, blessed, I'll read it straight from here again. Happy are those who fear the Lord, who greatly delight in his commandments. Verse 2. Their descendants will be mighty in the land. The generation of the upright will be blessed. Do you in your home fear and obey God? Which really comes down to this. Do you believe that God is who God says God is? Because if you do, then there's going to have to be some healthy fear and respect in there. Because otherwise, to think that there is a creator of the universe, of all creation, and that God is still involved means that there has to be some respect, some fear in there. I've told parts of this story, and I'm just going to briefly hit on it, but I want to, in summer of 2001, Carla and I made and by both of our estimations, a horrible mistake. I had been involved in ministry for a number of years. And just through, many of you have been in part of a church at times when the church just was under stress. And it doesn't feel much like church at that time. Well, Carla and I were serving a church at that time, and the church was under stress, and finally one day I just said, I've had enough of this. This is obvious. I'm obviously not called to be in ministry. And so I turned in my resignation, and we went and did something completely out of character for us. And what that was, those details don't matter at the moment, but during those, it took about 6 weeks for us to realize, oh my Lord, we have turned our back on our faith. Everything that we said we believed in raising our children, every Sunday morning in Sunday school, every week in Vacation Bible School, all the children's choirs, all the programs, all the hospital, everything that we had raised our children to see in us, I said, I'm tired of this. And I think in that time, in those weeks that led to it was a little over 3 months, I think God said, okay, you don't want me to bless you? You don't want my help? Okay, show me what you got, Terry. Miserable. Absolute misery. Absolute misery in that time. At that time, I chose to not fear God. I chose to go my own way. Well, let me tell you, moms, dads, grandparents, aunts, uncles, the penalty paid by my family is long-lasting, and you can't unwind things. Every day leads to another series of events. And so I say this, you need to fear God in your home and place God first in your home. If you have, faith may be new to you. Maybe hasn't been a big deal in your home, and it is now, but your children don't know faith. Just pray for them. Go to your knees and live your faith. Let them see the fear of God in you. Not fear as in, oh my God, but fear as in an awe and a respect and a belief. Second, recognize the world's needs and respond with compassion and action. What a simple demonstration right here. Jesus saw the needs. Jesus saw the needs of the multitudes as he was doing his earthly ministry. In Matthew, seeing the multitudes, Jesus felt compassion for them. You want to leave a legacy? One of the things we did right in our life is our children knew that they were expected to give and to participate and to do for others. My big rough tough son Marine, he and Sarah were at the house after we moved here, and a neighbor came across the street, and she knew that there was this big young man that lived in the parsonage, and her father had fallen. And so she came over, didn't know his name, he didn't know her, and she knocked on the door and she said, please help. And he didn't bat an eye, he went to help. We did teach our children compassion. Teach your children to be compassionate, to do for others. Whether it's for me, maybe you teach them with a pet, but you also teach them by teaching them to be generous, to do for others, to give. Any of you fly? Any of you like to fly? You know, I've told y'all before, I love to fly. I love to be crammed in that little bitty seat. You know, I do. I like that little bag of pretzels that you get. I love to fly. Yeah, I know it's a warped part of my mind. But I do. I love to fly. And I love the takeoff and the landing. You know, the two most frightening parts. But you know why I like it? I like to look around and I like to see the homes. I like to see the houses. But as I was getting ready this week, someone asked the question, do you ever wonder as you're flying over all of those houses, when you see those houses and you see the McMansions with the pools, and you fly over the golf course and you can see that little cart riding around, and then you see the trailer park that's only about a half mile away from it, and you see all these, do you ever wonder who lives there and say, I wonder if they know Jesus? Do you ever ask that to the people do the people down the street from you know Jesus? Let's be more blunt. Do the people down the street see Jesus in you? Do they see you as a kind, compassionate person? Are you the one who frowns, that never waves? We have a neighbor that never waves. They look away every time Carl and I come out. It's kind of funny. You know what we do? We do. Make some, I imagine they get inside that front door. They waved. I'm not sure if that's nice of me or not. Here's one. You want to leave a legacy, pray with your children, pray with your family. Pray for them, certainly, in your personal prayers. Pray for your spouse, pray for your grandkids, pray for everybody in your clan, pray for them, and then pray with them. That's hard. I understand for many of you believe very passionately, very deeply. I know that. And to ask you to do something as intimidating, if I were to ask some of you to say, I want you to come up and pray at the end of the service today, you know what some of you would do? You'd be out that back door. Some of you would go, okay, everybody bow your heads, close your eyes. And all we would do is hear the door slam at the end. I'm not asking you, I know praying out loud can be intimidating. Start here. If you want to pray with somebody, let's say, hey, let's start here. Just take them by the hand and say, we're going to pray quietly, but we're going to do it at the same time. And just take their hand. Sit in the same room with them at the same time. Pray with them. Teach your children or your grandchildren to pray. Teach your nieces, your nephews. Teach them to pray and teach them something a little deeper than now I lay me down to sleep. Easy way to start. When you got a baby, you're near a baby, you can pray out loud with a baby because all they're going to do is kick and drool. But they'll get used to the sound of you praying over them. and they'll get used to you praying with them. And they'll grow. Leave a legacy. You want to leave a legacy? I want you to be a better steward of your family's gifts and graces. If you know that someone in your family is good at something that can be utilized in ministry, I want you to encourage them to do that. I have, and they'll be embarrassed that I've called them, but they go to the second service, so unless you tell, they won't know. Many of you know Pat and Judy Coleman, and they've been here for a few years now, and Judy brings baked goods all the time. She'll just show up with 13 pans of whatever. And just because it's a gift that she has and she loves to give, she might be working with Operation Christmas Child. But she encourages Pat to go out and do what Pat's good at. Whether I think they may still be gone. I think Pat and Gus Myers are all doing hurricane damage assessments right now. Are they back? Are they? Thank you. They've gone out twice now. They're giving gifts of what they can do. What is your spouse, your granddaughter, your grandparent, what are they good at? Encourage them to utilize their gifts to give to others. That's how you leave a legacy. And ask God to give you and your family a sense of mission or a sense of direction. Leave a legacy. You can leave them money. You can leave them houses. You can leave them rings. You can leave them. Carla has a stack of music that's generations old from family members. But if you want to leave a legacy of faith. Because as you begin here and you leave it with you leave it with the next generation and the generation to follow, pray over them and show them, demonstrate to them your faith in God and God's love. You show them that they can count on God's love, and you will leave a legacy for generations. Thanks be to God for you. Thanks be to God for our families.